As watch enthusiasts and collectors, what do you do when you get a scratch on your watch? And I'm not talking about small, superficial scratches. That's the standard stuff. I'm talking about decent sized scratches and dents. What do you do? You see, I was at a dinner party recently and that's where the watch got scratched. I was sitting at the table, there was about 7 of us on the table, and what happened? Well, I happened to be wearing this on the night and someone wanted to check it out. So I showed him the watch on my wrist, and he was on the opposite side of the table, but he cringed and he said, "Come on mate, take it off the wrist, let me have a look at it." So reluctantly I took it off my wrist and I handed it over. Now as I proceeded to hand this watch over to this gentleman, a thought came to my mind. Does this guy know how to handle watches properly? I really hope so. But before I knew it, the watch was handed over to every single person on that table. It finally came back to me. 6 other people handled this watch, and some even tried to place it on their 19 and 20 centimeter wrists, but this Omega is sized to my 18 centimeter wrist. And by the time it came back into my hands, it was now decently scratched. Now who scratched it? It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It's totally my fault for being ignorant, assuming that others have the same knowledge on watch handling as we do. You see, as watch enthusiasts and collectors, we have a particular level of understanding regarding watch care, maintenance, and proper handling. We probably assume that all people are the same. You know, they can handle a watch, they know how to look after it, but you know what? The massive scratch on the side of this watch is testament not all people know how to handle a watch. And I remember watching a particular Paul Thorpe video just a little while back, and he demonstrated in that video how to handle a watch in a correct manner without banging it up, without scratching it. A really good video and very informative. But ideally, when you go into an authorized AD, a proper authorized dealer, you'll probably see those same handling practices. They hand over a watch to you, they know how to handle it, they know how to treat it with care so it still remains new even after it's gone through many hands. It's a luxury item, so they look after it like it's their own. Now, many of us have heard this saying before, that when you get your first scratch on a watch, it's developing character, and that's a good thing. And I said, really? So, I wanted to put this to the test. I told a mate of mine recently when he slightly scratched the front fender of his brand new car that it's character building for his vehicle. "It's all good, mate," I said to him. That didn't go down very well, I can tell you now. You see, he was the same guy who told me that when you get a scratch on your watch, it's all good, it's showing character. But when I told him the same thing about his car, he said, well, that's a different story. So I thought, you know what, let's keep this relevant. Forget about the car scenario. Let me ask proper watch guys, from enthusiasts to collectors, entry-level watchers, higher-end horology, what do they think when they scratch their watch? What do they do? So I actually rang up, emailed, or even spoke in person to 6 watch guys that I know. Some are enthusiasts, some are serious collectors, and I wanted to see, what do you do when you scratch your watch? Are you good? Does it bug the hell out of you? Do you get it fixed, or is it just character building? Now before I give you their answers, let's have a quick word about our sponsor for this video, Watch Crunch. Watch Crunch has paid me a large amount of undisclosed, unmarked, unsequential dollar bills to sponsor this video. And now, I'm rich beyond my wildest dreams. Well, maybe not rich, but they've sponsored this video, which is pretty cool. So what is Watch Crunch? Well, basically it's a platform for watch nerds who wear more than one watch per day, just like me. And you know what? It's actually free. It costs nothing, zero, zilch. I joined up myself a while back, and I tell you what, it's just an honest bunch of watch nerds with none of the BS. There's no hype, there's no bullying, just a friendly community of real watch lovers like you and me. So if you love watches, then this is the perfect outlet for questions, discussions, posts, wrist shot of the day. It's pretty cool. I encourage you guys, head over there, and if you get a chance, even follow me on Watch Crunch. Let's get back to the video. So getting to the answers of the 6 guys that I asked. The first guy's name is John. And I said, John, what do you do when you get a scratch on your watch? What do you do, mate? How do you feel? And his answer was simple. He goes, first, you cry. Then it depends on how bad you scratched it and how much it costs to buy. If it's a cheap watch, then you rebuy it and you probably try to fix the problem yourself. If the watch is expensive, then get it professionally repaired or just leave it. I would only flip it if it really bothered me. And that's John. The next guy's name is Stephen. And I said, Stephen, what would you do if you scratched your watch? How would you feel? And he said to me, well, it depends on the watch. If it's the Rolex or one of my higher end watches, I get it fixed. If cheaper watches, never mind, keep it as is. Then I asked the third guy, Tim. I said, Tim, how do you feel when you scratch your watches, mate? And he said, when I had only one watch, I never thought anything of it. Recently I scratched my Zin buckle, but it's my tool watch. I've thought about buying a tegimented bracelet though. Me personally, I expect to scratch here and there, and I buy watches to use and keep rather than to collect. If I sell a watch, it would not be because it's scratched. Having said that, Peter, when I'm looking for a watch now, I prefer one which has some scratch resistance. And I thought, you know what, that's a pretty cool answer. The next gentleman's name is Dimitri. And I said, Dimitri, what do you do when you scratch a watch? Do you sell it? Do you keep it? What do you do, mate? And Dimitri's answer was this: what to do? Sometimes doing nothing is always best. I think it comes down to the kind of relationship you have with your watch. And that's valid as well. Dimitri's kept it short and sweet. The fifth gentleman that I asked, his name is Ian. And I said, Ian, what do you do when you scratch your watch? And his answer was very simple. It's got to go. The watch is not the same now, it's got to go. And I thought, okay, he's a lot more critical than me. And the last gentleman that I asked about the watch is Tony. I said, Tony, what do you do when you scratch your watches, mate? And Tony's answer was quite thorough. The scratches make the watch your own. Each scratch or dent is a memory, something for you to reflect on many years down the track, especially if you're handing the watch down to a loved one. Now, on the other side of the coin to that is, you only buy watches for a short time to either say, yeah, I owned a Rolex, Omega, etc., sort of bragging rights. So you try to avoid scratches on your watch that are really only safe queens, and you know you're only going to sell them and hopefully make a profit. And the third part of his answer was this: then there's the serial flipper. You buy watches on impulse, and they turn out not to be what you thought or wanted, so you try not to damage them in any way because you know you're going to flip them at some point. To these people, scratches and marks on their watches are the enemy. Now, as you can see, all these answers differ from person to person according to their personal experiences. That's a great thing, and that shows individuality. And you know what? If I put the same question out to the greater watch community, I'd probably expect to get much more variety in the answers again. But I do know for a fact that when proper watch collectors are seeking out watches, whether rare or current, their motto is this: condition is everything. You see, anyone can find a 50 or 60-year-old banged up watch with battle scars, etc. But how difficult is it to find a watch that is almost new old stock or really babied and looked after properly? That's the watch that's highly sought after in the collector's circle, and those type of pieces fetch a proper dollar. And in saying that, guys, how many people do we know that buy a watch and it becomes a safe queen? You know, it comes out to see the light of day on some special occasion, or when it's ready to be sold and flipped for a profit. Scratches on a watch like that, of course, they're an enemy. Now, if this thing with scratches and watches isn't a valid thing, because none of us like to have scratches on our watch, well, not that I know of anyway, but if it wasn't a valid thing, I ask this question: why are manufacturers producing watches with new technologies, with hardness coatings, with tegimented steel, with stuff that makes the watches almost scratch proof? It's because that's our desire. We don't want our watches scratched up. We want them looking pristine. Again, I'm generalizing here. It's all relative to the watch, its purpose, how expensive it is, and how it affects you personally. And on that note, I know a couple of people who've got some Zin watches with tegimented technology, and 3, 4, 5 years later, there's not a mark on the watch. These watches look like they're brand new out of the box. So the technology is there to be able to keep a watch pristine. So in summing up, guys, what about me? What did I do with the Omega? I got it fixed. You see, in all my years with watches, I've scratched about 4 watches in total, that's it. Even if I wear them as dailies, personally I seem to have developed some really decent habits that look after the watch on my wrist. And to be honest, I think it comes down to my very good work practices as a professional photographer. Handling cameras and lenses over the past 30 years, it's just good habits. So for me, when I scratch a watch, it's a pretty big deal. With the Omega, I took it to the professionals, I had them remove the scratch. For me, I liken this watch to a new car syndrome. And even though the scratch was on the crown side, the only real person who would notice that would be me, because the watch faces downward when you're wearing it on your wrist. But because I knew it was there, it bugged the living daylights out of me. I had to get it fixed. So as we can see, it's a big hobby and every one of us is different. I've tried for years with my equipment to let things be. Oh, it's only character building, it's a scratch. But you know what? Personally, I can't do it. There are guys out there that can. There are people who have watches and they're scratched up and they have got character. They have got a life story. That's brilliant. I can't do it. I just can't. I keep my watches pristine. I try my best to look after them. I suppose all of us are individual. We have our own convictions. But how about you? What happens when you scratch a watch? Is it the end of the world or just another day at the office? Hit me up in the comments, guys, with your experiences and what you've done about it. Fix it, flip it, or let it go. Whatever the case, we all try to keep our watches scratch-free. Pun intended. Case, you know, scratch-free? Never mind. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Once again, hit me up in the comments. Let me know your experiences, and we'll see you all in the next video.